Pursuant to Section 84-1411 of the Nebraska statutes, notice of this meeting was given on October 30th, 2020. The meeting will convene at 6:30 p.m., and visitors may obtain a request to be heard form from staff or any presentation they may have for this meeting. In accordance with policy, the request to be heard forms must be submitted to the secretary within the first 5 minutes of the board meeting in order to be heard at this meeting. Agenda items are subject to reordering at the discretion of the board president. Please attend the entire meeting to ensure you're able to hear any discussion. Pursuant to Section 84-1411 of the Nebraska statutes, the next regular meeting of the Board of Education of Douglas County School District 0001, and the Board of Educational Service Unit number 19 will be held on Monday, November 16th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. in the board meeting room of the Teacher Administrative Center, 3215 Cumming Street. The agenda will be kept current and available for public inspection in the in the office of the Secretary of the Board of Education at the Administrative Building during regular working hours. Pursuant to Section 84-1412 of the Nebraska statutes, the public is hereby informed that a current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is posted in the board meeting room on the north wall. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Cassidy will lead us in the OPS vision and mission statement.
Okay, first the vision. Every student, every day, prepared for success. And the mission? Omaha Public Schools prepares all students to excel in college, career, and life.
Okay, roll call, please, Mr. Ray.
Cassidy,
Here.
Gauding,
Present.
Holman,
Present.
Cracky, Perlman, Ryan,
Present.
Smith,
Present.
Snipe,
Present.
Snow.
Just in time, here.
9 present.
I see those beautiful smiles out there. Ready? Alrighty. Pursuant to Section 84-1411, did you already read that? Sorry. Fair enough. Moving on to School Spotlight with Jeremy Maskell.
Good evening, President Snow, Vice President Dr. Holman, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Logan. Tonight's OPS Proud Spotlight recognizes the IMS team of Omaha Public Schools for their work throughout the summer and fall to deliver on our one-to-one technology initiative following the Board of Education's vote of support this spring. Not just securing and distributing tens of thousands of devices, but educating and supporting staff, students, and families to maximize the potential of this investment, all while they ensured our daily devices, systems, and networks continued running as they normally do. We shared this feature on social media channels earlier in recognition of IT Professionals Day.
Behind the scenes sometimes, but we're at the forefront. We always are kind of behind the scenes sometimes, but we're at the forefront of this deployment in the for OPS.
Troubleshooting computer hardware problems, anywhere from computers, printers, iPads.
Customer service, being able to be very flexible, changing things on a dime.
I maintain and help people with the district professional library.
I train, I'm a technology trainer, and I support basically everybody in the district.
We're just here to help.
It's been incredible. It feels like we're not alone. It's a team effort and everyone's pushing through it.
I appreciate that I'm given the opportunity to sort of like help out everybody and just sort of be a resource.
Congratulations and thank you to the IMS team of Omaha Public Schools.
Thank you. Moving on to Board and Superintendent Communications, starting off with our Superintendent, Dr. Cheryl Logan.
Good evening, President Snow, members of the board, those here in attendance, and those watching the stream. Tomorrow is Election Day. We do not have school tomorrow. School is not in session. This means both in-person and virtual classes will not take place tomorrow. This decision was made last year as part of efforts to reinforce our safety priorities. Closing school allows voters access to the polls on the election day without potentially disrupting the school environment. This year, specifically, closing our schools on election day also ensures voters can follow the social distancing required as part of our county's directed health measures. Wednesday, November 4th will also be a professional learning day for staff. We've successfully returned all students who wish to attend in person using our Family 3-2 instructional model. To maintain an understanding of COVID-19 cases inside our schools, we continue to test staff regularly, dependent upon their roles and responsibilities. Regular testing provides critical information to make the best decisions possible in the event we see evidence of virus transmission. And I think everyone here could agree that throughout our community we are seeing very high rates of virus transmission. Last week, we temporarily transitioned Highland Elementary School to remote learning due to the number of COVID cases identified inside the school and its impact on daily operations. Our team has disinfected the school, and remote learning continues for Highland students and staff this week. Indeed, we have closed other classrooms around the district as we have needed. Each day we are at school in person is an opportunity to learn how to best navigate our new normal. We are taking lessons learned each day to improve our efforts going forward. During this time, there is a huge need to support our students' emotional health and well-being. Continued emotional supports for our students as the return to in-person learning remains a priority. Through our counseling staff, we are prepared to support our students' mental health and well-being and do all of our best to keep them on track for graduation. We are proud to share that students in grades 6 through 12 can now access their OPS social, emotional, and post-secondary career curriculum online. Each week when students log into their Naviance account, they now have access to new lessons, surveys, and reflections on topics including self-discovery, academic skills, career planning, and success skills. These activities support students' post-secondary planning needs in addition to their social, emotional learning needs. Please encourage our secondary students to log in and explore the lessons and additional content. This will also be a great resource to consult during winter break next month. We want to provide a friendly reminder that teachers do take attendance daily at the start of the school day and during each online instruction session. We're asking our families to help make sure students are on time for online instruction, prepared for class, and logged in at the start of class. We ask that our families call into the student attendance office on days when your student is unable to participate in daily scheduled remote learning sessions. Speaking of attendance, one precaution we can all take to keep ourselves well this winter is getting our flu shots. Our partners at Douglas County Health Department have asked us to continue to remind our community about the importance of ensuring our staff, students, teachers, and families set appointments to get flu shots. The CDC has stressed that the flu vaccine is more important this year than ever before to keep ourselves protected from the flu in the midst of a pandemic. The flu vaccine can also help reduce the burden on our healthcare system. Flu season is most active between December and February. We're encouraging our staff and families to get flu vaccines as soon as possible. Questions about the flu vaccine can be directed to the Douglas County Health. And so, as we always do, we will try to end the superintendent's remarks this evening with congratulations. South High's Sam Pineda for being accepted into the National Association for Music Education's National Honor Choir. Pineda is the first student in South High history to earn this honor. All OPS students who were selected to Nebraska All-State Choir, Band, Orchestra, and Jazz Band. Amanda Gutierrez of Omaha North High Magnet School for earning the Ron Jokel Award for championing youth leadership development in her teaching, and for Marissa McClintock of Alice Buffett Magnet Middle School for being recognized as the 2020 Middle School Art Educator of the Year by the Nebraska Art Teachers Association. Nice work, students, and nice work, OPS teachers. Thank you for making us OPS proud. This concludes my remarks, Mr. Snow. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Logan. Moving on to board members. I will start with Ms. Snipe.
Thank you, President Snow. I just wanted to take a moment just to thank Dr. Logan because Highland is in my neighborhood. Some of my kids I play with go to Highland as well, and I know there's been a lot of unexpected crisis and just ups and downs that have left a lot of us just really anxious, drained, and exhausted, really, especially our teachers and students. But I know there's really no right answers, but I was grateful for what you did, because it shows, like I've always known, that, you know, the safety of our students and staff is top priority. So thank you for that, and it's greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Ms. Snipe. Any other board members? Ms. Cassidy.
I just want to take a quick moment. Obviously, tomorrow is Election Day, and it's an exciting day for several different races, probably one of the most important elections that our nation will face. But here at our board table, I just want to wish all of the candidates, some that are up here tonight, including myself, and some candidates that might be out in the audience or maybe home watching this evening live. I just want to wish everyone good luck. This board will undoubtedly look different next in January. But whatever the outcome, I think it's important to keep in mind that all of us, whether we're running again or not, the main primary goal of our board is to ensure that our students receive the best education possible, that we continue to move our district forward despite the challenges that we are facing, and of course that we just have a collaborative board that works together in unity with our district to move it forward. So just want to wish everyone good luck, and we'll see what tomorrow brings.
Thank you, Ms. Cassidy. I appreciate that. Any other board members? Mrs. Cracky.
Hi. I have about 3 things to talk about. And the first one was in the paper. And for you who didn't see it or read it, it was in October 30th, and maybe you caught it. But for the
Mrs. Cracky, can you move the mic to your
Sure.
mouth? Thank you.
But for the
Appreciate it.
football fans, Larry Martin of North High was doing something with the football players, and they're going to get an opportunity to showcase their talent for college coaches. Iowa Western worked with OPS coaches to put together something that's happening on November 21st. They're excited to offer this opportunity for them. And I have to, he said, the man there that's doing it is a coach, Scott Stroheimer, Meyer. I think I might have gotten it right. He said, I have to thank all the OPS head coaches in helping make this event happen. And Larry Martin brought the idea up, and we wanted to do anything we could to help these kids. And Martin said, this is an excellent opportunity for student athletes to demonstrate their skills and draw interest from colleges and universities. We want to thank IWCC for their work to make it possible. The combine, is what they say, is for OPS football players in the 2021 and 2022 classes. Coaches from Iowa Western will lead drills and testing at the Campus Marshall Wellness Center. And from there, they're going to check them out, oversee them, and give them some heads up on things that they can do in the future, or some scholarships might be offered, is what I got from the article. Then I wanted to read from a retired teacher that wrote me this note, and she said, we hear daily about the difficulties being encountered by the teachers in the classroom and virtually online. Bless them all and the students and families and all connected to the educational process today. It has been and is a challenge. I would be at a true disadvantage in knowing how to use the computers, etc., needed for virtual learning. This was a person who had excellent handwriting. She was a great teacher, and she's been retired for several years now. And then the third thing that I want to talk about is that the Viking News is still on track. I'm getting this in the mail, and I love it. It's sort of like getting a present. It's as close to freshman school as I get. And so when she mails it to me, I just love it. That is one of the schools that I represent. And it's colorful, and she had all kinds of things in here. It was just fun reading. And I want to thank her and tell her how much I appreciate that again. Anyone else who's one of my schools, if you're doing a paper, you can send it on to me too. You know, I like to get them in my hand. I used to like to get them in my hand so I could go to the events. Right now, we're not eventing, so we'll be happy to do that as soon as somebody figures something out and we get to go out in public again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cracky. Mr. Perlman.
Yes, thank you. I missed the last board meeting, but I again want to talk about COVID and how it's impacting our schools. I handed out a few things to everyone here on the board. The first is a graph that I'll get to in a minute. The other is a New York Times article from early April of this year. And a third is a graph that explains what they've done in New Brunswick, Canada, and I'll get to that eventually. The reason I want to talk about it is because it has what we're doing as a state and as a city and a county is having a direct impact on our ability to have children return full-time into schools and parents not have their lives upended because their kids can only go to school half the time. And so what I want to do is first talk about how the experts tell us how we get a handle on this, and again, urge those with the ability to make the right decisions to pivot now, or else the consequences, we know what they are. We're told what they are every day, and I just can't be up here and not talk about this every time I have an opportunity to, because it's when we're told that we have to open up our state and not put in place the measures that we have to stop the spread of the virus, or our economy will go to the tank. That's a false dichotomy. It's a false choice. It's incorrect. It's not true. In America, we can point to the state of Vermont, which has a Republican governor, and effective health measures, which has led to one of the lowest rates of transmission of COVID in the country, and it also has one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country. So this is science. It's not magic. It's science, and we should listen to the scientists and the doctors. 36 days ago, the governor removed nearly all restrictions, or he had the state health director do that. And what that meant is bars, restaurants, churches, gyms, and other businesses can be open at full capacity. The thing about a mask mandate is it doesn't do any good when you're not wearing them. And when you're inside a restaurant, you're not wearing them. So on September 14th, when that directed health measure went from level 2 to level 4, there were 99 people in the hospital with COVID in Omaha. Now there are 264. That's science. That's the virus. The virus is in control, and the only way to stop it is to have effective directed health measures that experts tell us to have. 10 days ago in Omaha, there were 81 intensive care beds available. Yesterday, there were 52. A month ago, there were only 25. Not sure how we got back up to 81, but we're there, or we were there, and now we're down to 52. And that was with a whole lot less cases of COVID in Omaha. Douglas County is a population of about 570,000 people. I want to show people the graph I made. Sorry, I'm not very good at making graphs. I taught myself how to use Excel this week, so this is what you get. But what you see in this graph is Douglas County on, I think, the far right, and some other cities across the country that are much bigger than Douglas County. Washington, D.C. has about, 20% more people than Douglas County, yet they only have 17,000 cases of COVID. Portland, Oregon has 812,000 people, yet they have 9,000. I'm trying to get that on the television, but it looks like we can do both. We have a camera right there. Either way. Thank you. You're fine. You're fine. So Portland, Oregon, they have, well, I think I said that. They have 9,500 cases, and they have 30% more people than Omaha, Douglas County. San Francisco has 883,000 people, and somehow they only have 12,200 cases, and their economy is actually opening back up. I know they've had some hiccups this week, but that's because they don't want to end up like Omaha. Buffalo, New York has 919,000 people, and they have about half as many cases as Douglas County, even though they have about 40% more people. Pittsburgh has 1.2 million people, and they have about 8,000 less cases of COVID in their city. Oakland has 1.6 million people, and they have the same amount of COVID cases as Omaha. 3 times as many people, the same amount of COVID cases. Seattle has more than 4 times as many people as Douglas County, and they have just a little more COVID than Omaha does. And then you see New Brunswick. New Brunswick on the graph is on the far right. I can't say that I knew much about New Brunswick until I started looking into this, but they have 780,000 people in New Brunswick, Canada. It's north of Maine. Sounds like a tremendous place. They have 300 cases of COVID the whole time. And you might ask yourself, well, how do they do that? They shut down like Wuhan. That's how they do that. And you might ask yourself, how's their economy doing? Well, it's opened back up. They've regained 80% of the jobs that they've lost. So again, when I talk about a false dichotomy, that's what the data shows us. That's what the science shows us. That's what 1918 shows us. That's what that New York Times article shows us. You can find that article. In 1918, the cities across the country that shut down longer and harder recovered quicker and better and stronger than those who tried to cheat the system like Nebraska is trying to do now. That's what that graph shows. Omaha's on there. Look at it. It's on the top right. Economic activity was up 80% in 1919 in Omaha, Nebraska, and that's because they did what they knew they had to do when they were confronted with a deadly pandemic. So in New Brunswick, Canada, they've had 300 cases of COVID with 780,000 people, and only 6 people have died. So, you know, when you talk about Douglas County and what, about 200 and almost 250 people have died, 23 by tomorrow, 24,000 cases. This doesn't have to happen. It's not an either or. You don't have to shut down like Wuhan to get numbers like New Brunswick or Oakland or Portland or Buffalo. All you have to do is some very common sense things. One of those is to test properly. Omaha obviously isn't testing properly, otherwise we wouldn't have 1 out of 5 tests coming back positive. I'm not sure why after 7 or 8 months of this that we only have one company that's been hired to do testing. It's not enough, it's never been enough, and until there's enough testing, that'll always be a problem. The second thing that we all can do to stop the pandemic, the doctors tell us, is to wear masks. I guess it's debatable, but not really, because the science tells us that masks work, and that's why there aren't big outbreaks in the schools, because the children are wearing the mask when they're told to wear a mask. It's not complicated. Another big thing we need is leadership. Leadership is sorely lacking in this area by our political leaders. We got the press release about the 3 C's on October 21st. The 3 C's, as we all know by now: avoid close contact, confine spaces and crowds, 7 days later, there was a crowd of about 25,000 people, most of whom were not wearing masks, crowded together for about 5 hours. Our political leaders attended that crowded place with close contact in a confined space. So we need some leadership here if we're going to get a hold on this pandemic. So where do we go from here? We can let local control become a thing again. When a county asks the state to be permitted to implement the measures that they know are best for their communities, I believe that the heavy hand of state government should back off and let the local communities decide what is best for them. That's always been the mantra of some. I'm not sure what has happened to that. If Douglas County wants a directed health measure, they should get one. I don't think that bureaucrats in another town should be telling local communities what's best for them to control the spread of a deadly plague. I think that as the doctors and epidemiologists will tell us, that indoor businesses should not be open to 100% in the winter. That is not good when you're trying to stop a pandemic. That's what the virus wants. That's what accelerates the pandemic, and that's not going to help anyone get our kids back into the school. I've heard over the past couple months that if someone makes a rule or a law, people will do that thing more. This one right here is within my wheelhouse as a prosecutor. I've actually never heard that. I've never heard that before, other than when you're talking about maybe kids and alcohol. But interestingly, this year, Nebraska did sign a new law, and it says that kids can't buy tobacco products unless they're 21 years old. So for those who think that making laws will lead to people doing that thing, then I would like to hear how that's reconciled with a new law that goes into effect in just a couple days that raises the age to buy tobacco products for minors. Because by that logic, we're going to have more kids smoking, and that's not good. We also don't tell people to drink and drive. We tell people to not drink and drive. We don't tell people to go drink and drive until they're .79. We tell people not to drink and drive, and we make laws for that. We make laws for speeding. We make all sorts of laws. The mass mandates, the laws, the ordinances, the civil infractions, not the crimes, have been shown to be effective. And look, the bottom line is if nothing's done to reverse course in Nebraska over the next week or two, the number of people in our hospitals in Omaha with coronavirus is going to double. And it's going to double again, and it's going to double again. And by the time we get to January, we are going to look like Italy. That is a fact. That's not a prediction. That is a fact. And so there is no shame in reversing course and implementing the things that everyone knows need to be done to stop the spread of this virus. The measure by which we decide to open up businesses can't simply be capacity in our hospital. It's a false dichotomy. It's a morbid dichotomy. It doesn't need to be that way. It hasn't been that way in places all around the country. It wasn't that way 100 years ago when we were faced with the exact same thing. It's just very simple measures can control this pandemic. And I'm just, I only have a few more board meetings, and I'm going to say the same thing for the rest of the time that I'm on the board, because I can't have a platform and not say this. I can't have that on my conscience.
Thank you, Mr. Perlman. Any other board members comment? All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Actually, it's public comment. So we have 3 forms that have been submitted for public comment. everyone should know that has signed up today already that the board has adopted policy 8346, which provides public comment for a period of 1 hour. That same policy limits individual speakers to a maximum of 5 minutes. Mr. Ray will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining and when you have 30 seconds remaining. If you are in need of an interpreter, please let Mr. Ray know and one will be provided for you. If the subject of your public comment is related to a particular student or staff member, we ask that you not mention the student or staff member by name and instead provide that information to Mr. Ray. He will assist us to look into those types of details for you. If you do not get an opportunity to speak and would like to submit any written commentary, please provide it to Mr. Ray and he will make sure each board member gets a copy. As a reminder, we please ask that you spell your name and state your address before you begin your public comment. It is 7:03 and our first speaker is Gary Gerard. Good evening.
Good evening, Board. President Snow, Superintendent Logan, thank you so much for letting me speak to you tonight. My name is Gary Gerard. I'm the Executive Director of Continuing Education for Metropolitan Community College.
Please state your name and spell your name and state
Spell
your
it?
address. Yes.
Garygirard.
Yep.
Gary Gerard.
And then your address, your home address.
My home address?
If you don't feel comfortable sharing that, that's perfectly fine. The reason why we typically want to do that is a lot of people are watching, want to know like if you live in the district or not in the district.
I do not live in the district, but I work just down the street with Metropolitan Community College.
You can just give the address of Metropolitan Community College.
Pardon?
The address of Metropolitan Community College. That's fine.
I don't have
You're
the.
fine. Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Gerard.
Thank you. I'm here to express our sincere support for the Yates Illuminate initiative. Metropolitan Community College, on behalf of our Board of Governors and our President, has our full support in terms of that initiative. And in addition to that, I want to just share with you that most of you probably know that MCC sponsors or manages a variety of community learning centers throughout the greater Omaha area. So we have 9,000 square feet at the Do Space on 72nd and Dodge, which serves as like a technology equalizer, free access to technology. In addition to that, just right up the street, we have the North Express Center in the Highland neighborhood. And then we also have South Express over on Vinton in South Omaha, and then a makerspace area over on 11th Street. And the reason why I say that is just right up the street at our North Omaha North Express Center in the Highline neighborhood, we immediately pivoted when COVID hit, and we currently retrofitted our space to accommodate over 50 K-8 students whose families were caught up in challenges related to COVID. So we have over 50 students whose parents, you know, when you have the 3-2 model, most of the students are OPS students who come for 8 hours a day, and we provide a support kind of environment. In the morning, they're working synchronously with their students. In the afternoon, we provide enrichment services for 8 hours. And so the reason why I say that is that we're eager to activate the Yates Center. And if the Yates Center was open today, right now, we would do the same thing in that neighborhood. And so in terms of what we would offer at that center, we offer a full continuum of learning from age 3 to 90 plus. We would do that at that center, and we feel like with the collaboration that's been designed at the Yates Illuminate with all of the nonprofit centers, we could develop and partner and develop a world-class center that would focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, and become an equalizer for the community. And when Metro decides to develop a learning center, it goes through a pretty significant vetting process. And our Board of Governors and President have fully support this initiative. If you have any questions for me, that's all I have. Yes?
You said they were there for
30
8
seconds.
hours?
One second. During public comment, you just
It was
make your
just,
statement.
I have a question about what they're proposing. I
There-
wanted to
we
know
did-
about lunch.
Mrs. Cracky, we typically do not engage the public
No?
when they leave engage in public comment. You can meet with this gentleman after the meeting. We do have his address and his email for the public.
You do.
Thank you
Okay.
so much, Mrs.
Thank you.
Gerard.
Take care.
Our next speaker is Walter Sue Dodd. Please spell your name and state your address before you begin your public comment, and good evening.
Good evening. Walter Sudodd, WALTA-SUEDODD. I live at 3233 Madison Street in Omaha. I am the Omaha Education Association retired president. Nice to see you again. We are concerned about OSER's staff's well-being and their future. By state law, OSER staff are OPS employees and members of OSER's, but their salaries and fringe benefits are paid from the OSER's trust fund. Under Nebraska Public Employee Retirement System, IMPERS, current OSER's members will most likely lose their jobs. If hired by the state, they will no longer be members of OSER's, but would be state employees and move to the state employee cash balance retirement plan, which is significantly different and lower benefits. Currently, there are 4 OSER staff members. Under this new plan, IMPERS would need to add 4 additional employees, plus an additional call center employee, plus a full-time paralegal, plus 1 additional IT application developer. The cost of these additional employees will be charged back to OSER's trust fund, or will OPS pay for the additional staff? OSER has no IT staff member. IMPERS will need to rely on OPS IT staff to complete the transition. Will OPS pay for the cost of any transition? IMPERS would need to hire temporary staff for at least 2 years to accommodate the transition of files, with the additional cost charged to either OSER's trust fund, or will OPS pay for the cost? If a change were to go forward, a complete transition team would need to be created and funded. The Lena report does not give specific details on how this transition team would be selected or how it would function. The report did indicate that the transition team would not rely on either IMPERS or OSER's staff, but it did not estimate the cost or allocate that cost to the various parties that might be involved. Will OPS pay for the cost of the transition team? OSER's currently hires its own auditor, which is the same one that OPS uses. Under the new management system, the state auditor would be employed at approximately double the cost of the current auditor. Will OPS pay for this additional cost? The entire IMPERS staff would need to be trained on the unique benefit structure of OSER's. The cost and scope of that training is not addressed in the report. Will OPS pay for the training? OSER's members did not request this administrative change and should not be burdened with the cost. OPS requested the change and requested the Nebraska Legislative Retirement Committee for the study. OPS offered to pay for the cost of the switchover, which might be completed by 2023. Will OPS pay for the total cost until the switchover is completed? The Lena report left many unanswered questions and cost factors, but OPS School Board voted to continue the process of changing the administration of OSER's. no matter what it does to the staff, OSER's members, the Omaha community, or the cost.
1 minute.
The only objective OPS board cares about is getting out of the retirement business. But for the foreseeable future, the OPS school board is responsible for state statute for the annual retired contribution, which is the ARC, to the pension plan and its unfunded liability obligation. The Nebraska legislature retirement system stated will not assume OPS's financial responsibilities. So until the state statute is changed,
30 seconds.
OPS board will never be out of the retirement business. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Walter Sudat. Our next speaker, our final speaker is Robert Miller. Please spell your name and state your address before you begin your public comment. And good evening.
Good evening. My name is Robert Miller. I live at 7301 North 107th Avenue in Omaha, Nebraska, 68122. Again, my name is Robert Miller, and I am the president of the Omaha Education Association. First, I would like to say that an open dialogue has been ongoing with Dr. Logan over the last several weeks. OEA appreciates the invitations to participate in the discussions around COVID and how it is being addressed with our district. We all play a pivotal role to stop the spread, and we must continue to lead by example by practicing the safety measures that have been laid out by medical professionals, including wearing a mask, social distancing, avoiding crowding spaces. We can and we must do better. I'm here tonight to shed a light on issues impacting teachers. The scenarios are true, but the names are not. I'd like for you to meet Mrs. Johnson, a second grade teacher with a class of 26 students. 10 students on Monday and Tuesday, 16 students on Thursday and Friday, alternating every other Wednesday. The expectation to keep everyone at the same place and follow the district pacing guide is a challenge. The online students often do not get the assignments completed. Multiple days are required to complete a skill requiring additional planning for assessments to practice those skills and provide more opportunities for students to show mastery. Not to mention the time it takes to evaluate student progress. The extra workload requires an additional 3 hours a night from Ms. Johnson's time each night after she puts her own kids to bed. But this must be done in order to keep up with the unadjusted pacing guide. Now meet Mr. Andrews, a seasoned music teacher in his 16th year. Due to the pandemic, Mr. Andrews is required to travel from room to room, teaching the lessons. While he is no stranger to teaching from a cart, the added planning needed to provide enough materials for social distance music lessons and proper sanitizing of materials has Mr. Andrews arriving at his building at least 1 hour early each day. He is in contact with students from at least 6 different classrooms each day, but he is not notified if one of them has exposed to a positive case. Even though he takes precautions with wearing a mask and sanitizing his own materials, he worries about the exposure each day when he arrives home to care for his elderly mother. Now meet Mrs. Hamilton, a second-year high school English teacher. Ms. Hamilton is struggling to keep up with the curriculum pacing and is worried she's falling farther behind. She has been covering 2 classes each day for the last 2 weeks, resulting in no duty plan time. Ms. Hamilton is recreating in-person lessons and her online learners using multiple media platforms. Ms. Hamilton is a new teacher and understands that some days an online lesson will work, while other days she will have to reach into her new teacher tool bag for another idea. Ms. Hamilton regularly seeks out her mentor teacher, but because they are both covering classes, there's little time for assistance. She leaves the school daily in tears, wondering if this is the career for her. These scenarios are examples of stories we hear each and every day. What our members are telling us is that the major concern teachers are having is the unsustainable workload. Teaching has always required the use of hours outside duty day, but this year it has doubled, if not tripled, the amount of time to prepare for daily instruction. We ask that grace be given on pacing guides issued by CIS. While some departments have communicated this, not all have. Your teachers will continue to do the very best they can to ensure that every student is known, loved, and inspired, and receives the best education possible. Your teachers know that pushing kids hastily through a set of curriculum schedule and assessing them as though their learning
minute.
has been uninterrupted is not the best for the students. We ask the board to give a speedy approval for suspending non-probationary evaluations for this school year, policy 4033. A friend recently described what educators are feeling, and the picture's quite accurate. Imagine in the field of education, it's been raining for some time. There's widespread flooding. Teachers have used sandbags to stop the water from leaking in.
30 seconds.
But before long, the sandbags won't work. Then what will we do? We need the action to save our teachers and address the workloads. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the end of our public comments. Moving on to the consent agenda. Before then, if I'm correct, Mrs. Cracky, did you have some items you wanted to pull from the consent agenda?
Yes, I wanted to look at I-2, and I had visited ahead of time with Matt with the idea that someone talks about that, because I think parents would be interested in hearing that from the music department or someone.
Okay, so you want I-2 pulled, and do you want I-5 pulled as well?
The other one was, let's see, we said I-5. Yeah, I thought we would like an overview of that, because it's
Okay,
been some time
so
that's been ongoing.
I understand. So what we'll do is we'll pull item I-2 and I-5 from the consent agenda. Grade configuration's already on information, and we'll put them under, if I'm correct, Mr. Ray, J1D and J1E for the two items that we pulled, which is the consulting agreement with the Omaha and the approval of the Greater Omaha Attendance Goal Center.
Correct.
Is any, that's fine. Does anybody else want anything pulled from the consent? Any abstentions?
Well,
I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda that is here before us. We can still have discussion, Mrs. Craig.
So moved.
There's a motion by Dr. Holman, is the second by Ms. Snipe. What was you about to say, Mrs. Cracky?
pardon?
Did you have a question or anything?
Well, I had the feeling when I talked to Matt that we would be engaging someone from our curriculum departments to visit these and talk about them.
So the
I
items
must
that
have
we
misunderstood.
understand. So the items that we pulled, when those items come up on the agenda, we can have that discussion. Does that
Okay.
sound good?
Well, I thought it would be here tonight when we pull something, someone comes and talks about it.
Well,
But
somewhat,
I
so
don't know if they're
staff-
prepared to do that.
staff or the superintendent will
Okay.
give a brief overview of the two
Okay.
items.
And the goals, and the other one was, what else did I pull out of here?
I only have the three items.
Mhm.
Grade configuration's already on information.
Okay.
Sounds good? All righty. Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Holman,
Aye.
Cracky,
Aye.
Perlman,
Aye.
Ryan, Smith,
Aye.
Snipe,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Cassidy,
Aye.
Goding.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Motion passes. Moving on to our first item, action item. Everyone good? Okay. J1A, this is the agreement with UNMC. And this is the COVID testing saliva for students and staff. Dr. Logan, do you want to start it off, or you're the superintendent, you know?
Thank you, President Snow. We are delighted to have our colleagues here from the University of Nebraska Medical Center, Dr. Yana Broadhurst, Dr. John Lawler, and Dr. John Lowe, who are going to give a brief overview, and then we'll be available for questions. We started speaking with them, it was August. Well, we've been working with Dr. Lawler since March, actually February. He came here in this room and met with all the superintendents in the area to talk about COVID. He might as well have said that aliens were going to land, because it's kind of how it was just hard to know what we were going to be facing. And just a brilliant individual, all three. And so we're really excited to have them here. One of the things that we need is more information. We are trying to operate schools with very high rates in our community, especially in the communities that we serve. I know I sent you the maps weekly, so you can see the numbers throughout our community. And at that time in August when we met, there was some developments going on, and the team said, this will be about 8-10 weeks out, and it came true, so we're very excited to have them here, and they will be available for questions. Dr. John Crow, our Director of Strategic Initiatives and Innovation, is been leading the project on behalf of our team in collaboration with Lori Voda, our Health Director. So we'll turn it over to Dr. Crow.
Thank you so much. President Snow, Vice President Dr. Hallman, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Logan, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here this evening. Because this is an action item, we're requesting approval for both agreements with UNMC, UNL, Nebraska Medicine, as well as One World Community Health Centers. I'm thrilled to have this privilege of speaking with you tonight about the Omaha Public Schools proactive testing for the community transmission of SARS-CoV-2 program, or the OPS Protects program. Omaha Public Schools is undertaking an historic collaboration between the district, the University of Nebraska Medical Center, the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, Nebraska Medicine, and One World to pilot a COVID testing program for 3 of our schools. This initial pilot consists of 3 different steps: saliva testing, in-building environmental monitoring, and wastewater monitoring. UNMC, UNL, and Nebraska Medicine are leading the efforts for the collection and transportation of the saliva and wastewater samples, as well as the environmental testing. To speak more about some of these efforts, it is my honor to introduce you to a world-class physician and researcher, Dr. Yana Broadhurst, who's the director of the Nebraska Biocontainment Unit Clinical Laboratory at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. Dr. Broadhurst?
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to present the OPS Protects pilot program this evening. At UNMC, we have developed an innovative COVID-19 testing strategy to meet the needs of a school-based screening program for Omaha Public Schools. The goals of a screening program are to catch infections in individuals without symptoms in order to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission. In developing this testing strategy, we set priorities to ensure impact and sustainability, including the ease of sample collection, the ability to test large numbers of samples quickly, use of common supplies that are less vulnerable to shortages, low cost, and high accuracy. With these priorities in mind, we chose a method for testing saliva, which is simple and safe to collect in a school setting. For the pilot program, we plan to collect saliva samples weekly from each participating student and staff member at 3 pilot schools. The collection process simply involves using a straw and a small tube. Students will be assisted by trained supervisors. The samples will be tested in our Nebraska Medicine Clinical Laboratory, with results reported to One World and the Public Health Department. Any individual with a positive test result will be notified by One World and receive guidance for follow-up care. In addition, OPS will have access to this information to aid in providing services and for school and district level decision-making. Uniquely, the OPS Protects program will integrate individual clinical testing with environmental monitoring approaches that have been developed by our extraordinary leaders in public health and environmental science at UNMC and UNL. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. John Lowe, an international leader in infection prevention science training and education, who serves as an executive director for the UNMC Global Center for Health Security and director of research for the Nebraska Biocontainment Unit.
Thank you very much. So I'll talk about the second layer of this monitoring program, pilot program, which focuses on the in-building environmental monitoring. So the in-building environmental modeling is going to focus primarily on two types of sample collection, air samples and surface samples. What you'll see here, the top two pictures are examples of the air samplers that we intend to use. Pretty common visual, very similar to a humidifier that you would see in an office or in a home environment. The purpose of the air and surface sampling is really to look at the safety protocols that are in place and validate that they're working or identify opportunities where we can fine-tune them to improve them. The second objective of this layer is to focus on if we move to a broader monitoring program for district-wide, does air and surface sampling provide us a type of data to help inform what's going on in the community on top of saliva sampling or perhaps in lieu of saliva sampling? So this monitoring would occur in predetermined locations throughout the 3 pilot schools. Locations that are of high interest, such as cafeteria, classrooms, music rooms, and hallways. And we chose those intentionally to make sure that, if we start to see something, we have opportunity to augment maybe how we release students from classes or how we arrange them in different environments. So with that, I'll hand it over to my esteemed colleague, Shannon Bartlett Hunt, who's a professor and chair of civil engineering at UNL, and also holds a professorship at UNMC in environmental and occupational health.
So additional layer of the monitoring program is to also monitor wastewater at the 3 pilot schools. You might be asking why wastewater. The reason is because individuals who are infected with the SARS-CoV-2 virus can actually release that virus in their solid waste when they use the restroom. And wastewater is being monitored in many universities and community settings as an additional way to track COVID transmission. So in this program, we plan to collect a wastewater sample from each of the 2 groups of students that attend school each week. This is a pooled sample, so we're collecting it outside of the school building by opening a sewer manhole at a location where all of the wastewater from the building drains into a common point. We collect that sample and then it's analyzed using methods very similar to the swab testing that will be performed. And this testing just adds another layer of environmental testing. There's some evidence that people may shed or release the virus in their waste prior to showing clinical symptoms. So again, it may be an early warning signal for COVID transmission. And also, we're working with some Nebraska communities, and our early data shows that the wastewater samples track with clinical cases. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, I'd be happy to open it up to questions for myself or any of my colleagues that spoke this evening.
Each presenter, I had additional questions piling up, but I'll
Great.
leave it to my colleagues if you have any questions. Mrs. Godding.
So I'm curious, and I think I remember Dr. Logan talking about this before, but from a permission standpoint, from students, do parents sign off on that? And then what about for the teacher side and all of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is going to be an opt-in for our students, so their parent or guardian will absolutely sign them up for this program, which will be handled through UNMC's new alert system, and it will be required for our teachers and staff, the school-based staff. Yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Cassidy.
Thank you. How long do we anticipate this program will last?
So this initial pilot program will, I'm sorry.
No, I'm asking.
That's all right, yeah, I'm here. The initial pilot program will last through the end of this calendar year.
Okay.
And then after that, we're anticipating working with Charles Drew Health Center to move into North Omaha and do some pilot schools there. And then with the eventual goal of us making sure it's feasible to scale this to the entire district. But that's our end goal, is to make sure we can get it out to all of the schools and programs.
And I might have missed this, but did we say, I'm trying to go back through the slides, did we say how long until test results come back?
We did not. That's
Okay.
a great question. One of the great things about this is we should have the results within 24 hours.
So depending on how many students and teachers will opt in to do this, I'm assuming that you'll break it up throughout the week, like maybe this grade level will go Monday, however
Yes.
it's broken up.
So we're very fortunate because we're going to be partnering with the College of Nursing and College of Physicians, who are clinically trained, and they're going to be the ones that are coming into the schools to actually do the sample collection of the saliva. And then that is going to be transported back to UNMC. Because it is such a large pool, at least in this pilot, we're anticipating doing the AK and then the LZ, so all students will be tested weekly. And obviously, we've already spoken to the principals of the schools, and we are, working on the logistics of getting them in and making sure everything is done in the first or second blocks.
Sure. And just for reiteration again, can you name the 3 schools that are the pilots?
Sure. It's
Or Army?
it's Mars, Norris, and Bryan High.
Okay, so none at the elementary level, just our middle school level and high school level.
Correct.
Okay. I think that's it for now.
Okay. I'm here all night.
Dr. Holman.
Thank you. Can you explain a little bit further? I know that Dr. Broadhurst mentioned what the process is, but she said there's a straw. But what exactly happens? Like, can you explain a little bit more in detail? what the
I'll just let
process
her give you that
is?
information.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Not to overuse my simple props, but just to demonstrate, it was important to us in developing this strategy, again, that we had something that was easy and safe, something that could actually be self-collected by students under supervision, but also that we weren't relying on any materials that could be in short supply. So specialized materials could be in short supply. It's been a challenge for us throughout the pandemic. So the method that we validated, it uses the same kind of straw that we all are familiar with, and then a small tube. And so the saliva sample is simply provided through the straw into the tube, and then the sample is cleaned and packaged by our supervisors.
Now, do they have to be able to produce a certain amount of the saliva in order for it to be a good enough sample for you, or?
Yes, they do. The volume is very small, so we haven't had any trouble in our kind of initial validation of the method and acquiring that volume. But it will be a role of our collection supervisors to visually check that volume and ensure that we have an adequate sample for testing.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Cassidy, we were looking at a feeder pattern, and based on what Dr. Broadhurst shared with us, looked at making sure it was middle and high school first. And we looked at zip codes, kind of where we had our largest incidents and those kinds of things also as well, where our first 4 weeks has already proved out that that's where we're going to have our most challenges in remaining open, and so that's how those schools were selected.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Logan. Mr. Smith, your question was answered. Ms. Snipe, and then Mrs. Godding.
Thank you, President Snow. So I might have missed this, so my fault. In regard to, because when I hear about data, to me that's like a story. So I'm just wondering, as far as the air and high touch surface testing, and then with the wastewater monitoring, what the information that you collect, what story is that going to be telling us, I guess is my question.
Sure, and that's a fantastic question that I cannot answer, so I will have Dr. Lowe come up here.
Yeah, so these are good questions. I feel like I'm doing a dissertation defense. But so the air and surface samples generally will just tell us if we're able to identify the virus in schools. So this starts to tell us the effectiveness of the protocols, right? And we generally use that data to inform how we are operating in a school. So again, it might inform decisions of you all in terms of, you know, the density that you're comfortable having in a school based off of the types of things that we're seeing. It might drive decisions to release students from schools or from classes on an alternating schedule. It might impact how we accommodate different type of educational activities depending on where those samples are collected. So this methodology mirrors the type of work that we've done with the cruise industry, with the airline industry, with the Department of Defense, where we're looking through having people in a space, and we have protocols in place that we are very confident in, and we go in and collect these types of samples to see if there was anything that we didn't envision that's occurring that could be mitigated. It also just provides us another layer of monitoring so that it's just another signal beyond perhaps the saliva testing. In terms of wastewater sampling, you know, Shannon is much more adept than I at speaking to that.
Yes, thank you for the question. So the wastewater testing can provide a couple of pieces of information. One is it provides a concentration of the virus present in the wastewater from a pooled, the whole community, the whole school building, everyone that's contributing wastewater. So it's a different type of sample coming from the school building that can give you the quantity of virus. There's a lot of active research going on how you can then relate that maybe to a number of cases that might be in the building. So it's a different type of tool in that way. The other use that I foresee for the wastewater testing is when we get to the point where COVID has diminished in a community, you could continue to test wastewater as a very inobtrusive sample. And if you start to see a rise, that may then tell you that we're headed into another wave or something like that. So those are some of the benefits of including the wastewater.
Do we currently test wastewater right now in Douglas County or Nebraska for COVID?
So I've been partnering with the city of Omaha, so we're just doing some very small-scale pilot testing, and we're also working with a couple of other communities as well as the university on, again, just kind of starting some pilot testing, but I do anticipate it will continue to be used in Nebraska and in other places as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mrs. Gotti.
I appreciate that explanation based on the on pooled data versus individual data as well. Just my experience with my college student and what they're doing in pooling and then what is being done individually. So I appreciate that, and I think that's probably extremely beneficial for all of us. Can you tell me, because there's always the information out there about, well, this test is more reliable than this test. So from a saliva standpoint, what is the reliability of a positive or a negative? And if we saw groupings of students who had positives, would there be another test that might be administered? Would that be a protocol that might be put into place?
It's a great question. I'll let Dr. Broadhurst address that.
That is a great question, and I'll answer it in two parts. So when we are determining an appropriate test to use for a program, we're thinking about two things. One is what specimen type are we going to collect? And the other is what is the method we're going to use in the laboratory to analyze that specimen. So in this case, the options for specimen type, of course, include the swab that Most of us have experienced at this point, some of which go farther into your nasopharyngeal mucosa, the swab that just samples your nares, and the alternative that we're talking about here, which is saliva. So there has been a lot of research in these different types of specimens, and the research has shown that saliva is a reliable specimen type for detecting early infections. So we are confident in the reliability of using this specimen for detecting cases early in infection. Now the second decision is how we analyze that sample. And again, there's a few options. The gold standard method for detecting the virus is to look for the genetic material of the virus in the sample. And that's a method called polymerase chain reaction, or PCR. And that is the method that we are using for this testing program. A major challenge is doing that testing at high volume and maintaining a low cost. And so that has required some innovation that has been really a national collaboration among other institutions who are trying to support large community screening programs. So we've worked hard to implement that type of strategy in the laboratory. So we do think that this is a highly accurate method. Both you wisely asked about both the potential for false negative results but also false positive results. And this methodology is very reliable in excluding both of those. In particular, we don't anticipate false positive results to be a problem with the PCR approach. False negatives can always happen with any methodology. The benefit here is that we're doing repetitive testing. And so that improves the likelihood that if we don't catch a case very early on, that we'll catch it at the next opportunity to test and still have the ability to act on that test result and reduce the risk for transmission.
Thank you very much for explaining that.
And I would like to point out too that combined, taken in concert with the other air sampling and surface sampling and wastewater, if you take it in constellation, it kind of gets a bigger picture too.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Perlman.
I do have a question about how this can be scaled up. Is that something that is being done? And if so, what is the ability to make this test widespread? And I guess my other question is, where is this DNA testing being done? Is it at the existing UNMC lab, or has something been set up specifically for this testing?
Yes, so I'll answer the second part of your question first, and it is going to be at Dr. Broadhurst's lab. Her team is the one that they're going to be doing the actual testing of the saliva. And to your first question, that's the point of the pilot, is to kind of try and figure out what scalability and feasibility looks like. Because again, it's not just OPS doing it, it's also UNMC, Nebraska Medicine, but then also currently One World and eventually Charles Drew. So kind of the idea is to all of our partners figure out what it looks like and how to get it done.
So I guess the follow-up to that would be, is there a, I don't know what the right adjective would be, but is there a company attempting to develop this to bring to market? Is that a collaboration that's happening?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, so who would scale this up?
We would.
Who's we?
Us, OPS, UNMC.
I'm talking about.
Nationally, you mean?
Or as much as we worldwide, as city, local, state, anything. Is this something that is going to be scaled up?
I think Dr. Broadhurst has some.
It's a great question. And really the answer there is that this type of strategy is being pursued by both companies and nonprofit institutions across the country. So there really is a collaborative effort nationally to develop these types of methods and to learn how best to improve and streamline laboratory processes to get this done more quickly and efficiently. So here, our intention is to further develop that capacity for high throughput testing in our Nebraska Medicine Laboratory, with the knowledge that what we do, others will learn from. What others do, we will learn from, and that there really is a collaborative development of these processes. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, to a large degree. I think maybe a correlated question would be, is the key limitation on scaling this up the ability to do DNA tests? And if so, can it, you might have said this earlier, could it be tested in a different way, maybe not the gold standard, but in a different way that, look, we may be able to do 1,000 times more, but not in a DNA way, if that makes sense?
It does make sense. It is, so I think that there are a few considerations that you raise. The underlying methodology is really not the limitation. It's really more the supplies to facilitate that testing. So a lot of the innovation that we've and others have been pushed to embrace is how to incorporate more common materials into our testing processes. That's really been a huge bottleneck in our ability to scale up testing over the course of the pandemic. There are other challenges to that process that really require the types of community partnerships that we're building here. So if 100,000 samples can show up in our lab and we can test them, that's great. But how do you get out there and collect that number of samples, transport them in, and provide that appropriate linkage to care that gives those tests meaning? So really the scale-up process in part has to do with our laboratory capacity, but really is a process of building these robust partnerships.
One of the things I think, Mr. Perlman, is, when we think about 4,000 tests in our pilot, that's bigger than almost every school district in the state. So we will certainly, others will benefit from our experience as well as us. So, thank you for the question.
Anybody else have any questions? Ms. Cassidy?
I just have kind of a overall thought to all of this. This is fascinating, first of all. So thank you all for being here. I'm just sitting here even just kind of put my parent hat on. And I hope that anyone watching, this just makes me feel a lot more at ease with my own children back in school. I mean, I look at these simple 3 slides that we're looking at, and we've covered, we're testing, brand new testing saliva-wise. This is wonderful. I mean, no child at all wants to have the other test. We all know that. Most adults don't want to. And then, our next slide is we're looking at air, we're looking at surfaces. It's amazing. And then something I would have never even thought of, the wastewater monitoring. I feel like we're looking at so many different ways here that are just so forth-thinking that I just really appreciate your time, and the collaboration is going to be fantastic for our district and hopefully for our city and maybe beyond. So just thank you all for being here. It puts me at ease, and hopefully a lot of our parents and teachers as well.
Mrs. Gotti?
I just want to echo that. For parents who are watching, as a parent who dropped their child off this year at college and was explained to this whole protocol of pooling testing and getting tested every week, I left him out of state, many miles away, feeling really comfortable, like Ms. Cassidy is saying, because I knew that there was going to be all these testing protocols, and with those protocols, I have received regular updates saying, oh, we're changing this, or we're going to do this, and even gotten updates on what will happen next semester that will be different. So for parents who might be a little bit leery, I would encourage you to allow your children to participate in this, because it will only benefit them and their friends that they're with, so that we can get back to some sort of normalcy as soon as possible. And so I guess your comment made me think about how great I felt leaving my child far away from home, knowing that there was a lot of testing. So I appreciate that very much and would encourage parents to participate.
Thank you. I have like 2 questions, actually 3. It could be 1, actually. The first one is your timeline, Dr. Crow. Do you have like a timeline on when you're going to bring that back to the board, or?
Yes, so after this initial pilot, we're going to be talking with UNMC and UNL and kind of talk about the feasibility of scalability for them and One World, and then again with Charles Drew, once that starts happening, we will be happy to keep you updated every step of the way.
I think that would be not just for the board, but also for the community.
Absolutely.
That as they are learning to trust the system.
Sure.
The second question I had is capacity. I'm assuming you didn't have a bunch of colleagues just waiting for COVID to arise to start doing all these tests. There's going to be a capacity issue, right? Or am I wrong on testing? Or, I mean, you're 54,000 kids, or even 4,000. Your staff is also doing other things, correct?
Yeah,
How do you monitor the capacity?
Right, so that's one of the issues that is going to have to be discussed and that we're going to have to take a look at. Is right now we're using, we've been fortunate enough to partner with UNMC, and they're giving us, they have volunteers from their College of Nursing and College of Physicians that are coming to help. Obviously, that's not going to be feasible with 54,000 students and all of the schools and programs that we have. So that will be one of the points of conversation surrounding what scalability looks like in this situation.
I understand. Thank you.
Sure.
And my last question there might just roll into the One World Charles Drew piece. Is a child test positive or a teacher test positive, what do we do? Do we just send them home to their family of 5 or 6, and now you have 6 people positive?
Yeah, so that's one of the great things about working with, I'm sorry.
Without any actual treatment or what they should be doing to protect themselves.
Yeah, and that's one of the fantastic things about working with our clinical partners is once there's a positive test result received from UNMC, they alert One World or Charles Drew, respectively, and then they let us know, and we begin our contact tracing protocol, just like we do in every other situation. And then One World and Charles Drew do follow up those clinical partner facilities like counseling or offering of primary care physician or something like that. So,
Nice.
I mean, we're not clinicians, so that's
No.
kind of what their role in this is.
And the reason why I bring this up is if I'm just thinking of this, if I'm a working household, the parents, got laid off of work because they're in the service industry, you have a child that's a junior that is able to work still, and there's a positive case, but no one wants to talk about it because somebody still needs to go to work to put food on the table. Are we doing anything in that kind of field to help families so they are not taking this huge risk of saying we need to put food on the table, but actually you're risking not just your lives but other people's lives by not acknowledging that you have this virus and going out there?
Yeah, and that's a fantastic question. And one of the reasons that we are partnering with One World specifically is just their kind of commitment to quality healthcare for traditionally underserved communities. So again, the clinician side, and that's kind of why we have them.
Okay. Well, thank you. This is fantastic, and I'm assuming all this data is being collected into the county, into the state's numbers?
Yes, so, and correct me if I misspeak, Dr. Broadhurst, but they are legally required to report to our health partners.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that driving the numbers down for the county of percentage, or is it steady? And I don't want to put you in an awkward situation because I know you are UNMC, so.
Yeah, all of them are really slow to move. So
no worries, no worries.
Okay,
I can have a sidebar conversation with the
All right.
superintendent. Thank you, though. I appreciate it, and thank you so much for coming tonight.
Were there any other questions? No. All right.
Was this? Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you.
it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks
Awesome.
to all, and really, thank you so much. Appreciate everybody coming out. No.
Okay, so we do have 2 action items here, J1A which is the agreement with University of Nebraska Medical Center, and J1B, which is the agreement with One World Health Center. I will entertain a motion, unless someone's against it, to approve both items.
So moved.
I can't do that? Legal says I can't do that. Okay, so I'm entertaining a motion to approve item J1A.
So moved.
There's a motion by Mr. Smith to approve.
Second.
Second by Ms. Ryan. I'm smiling with my eyes. I was told to do that today. Any discussion? Mr. Perlman.
Nothing other than to thank the partners at UNMC for this. We're incredibly fortunate to have some of the world's leaders right here in our city who are making time to help the students and families in our district. So I just want to, again, thank them for all their hard work.
Thank you. Mr. Perlman echoed that as well. Any other? Hearing none. Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Cracky.
Aye.
Perlman.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Snipe.
Aye.
Snow.
Aye.
Cassidy.
Aye.
Godding.
Aye.
Holman.
Aye.
9-0.
Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to item J1B, I will entertain a motion to approve the agreement with One World Health Center.
So moved.
There's a motion by Mr. Smith. Is there a
Second.
second? Second by Ms. Snipe. Any discussion? Mr. Perlman?
Also, want to also make sure to thank One World and for their expertise as well, and for everything that they're doing to help us be in the best place that we can. As one of the most impacted communities in the country with COVID, their expertise and assistance is, our gratitude can't be overstated.
Echo that as well, Mr. Perlman. Ms. Snipe?
I have to add to that. And to the comment earlier, Dr. Lawler and everyone else, you came and visited with us with the South Omaha Neighborhood Alliance. As someone who lives in 68107, One World, Andrea Skulkin, just all the work that all of you are doing is so greatly appreciated. I could not even probably really put it into words, so I just have to echo everything Ben said. So thank you very, very, very much.
Echo that as well. Thank you, Ms. Snipe. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Perlman.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Snipe.
Aye.
Snow.
Aye.
Cassidy.
Aye.
Godding.
Aye.
Holman.
Aye.
Cracky.
Aye.
9-0.
Motion carries. Thank you. I think the sound from the board is we're very grateful for this partnership. And I hope that we can have our students grow into this field and be a beacon for not just our state, but our country and the world. And I'm amazed at the work of UNMC and One World. So thank you again. Appreciate it. Moving on to our next item, J1C. And you don't have to stay for this one. This is boring stuff, so you can leave now. We're going to take like a 5-minute break. Thank you. All right, folks, we're going to get started. All right, folks, I'm not going to say this again, but we're going to get started with our next item with Dr. Holman that is going to be presenting J1C, Superintendent Year 3 Goals and Evaluation Contract Timeline. Dr. Holman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Snow. Last week, the Accountability Committee met and discussed with Dr. Logan her Year 3 goals, which are attached along with the timeline for board members' review. If anyone has any questions, please let us know.
Mrs. Gotti.
So I have a question. So I was curious to know. So it was the Accountability Committee, which is good to know. You met with Dr. Logan to go over the goals.
Yes, we did.
So the question I have is, and I get the Board of Education collaboration and the financial stewardship. Under the strategic plan of action, I would have liked to seen a little bit more related to academic rigor and performance, just because we currently are in a challenging time with providing education, and I've heard from so many different teachers at different levels on their concerns. So that's something I would like to see added in.
Which item is, was there a goal under there that you wanted that, or was it?
Well, I think I was thinking back to even the strat plan where we talked about growth in MAP, and because we didn't have MAP in the spring, are we looking at doing something between last fall to this fall for growth to get to this coming spring? I guess I'm just trying to figure out where can we provide some opportunity to show that, I mean, clearly that should be one of our main desires, I think, as we talk about all the time, is academic achievement of students. I would just like to see something like that. And I didn't really have anything specific, but.
I understand. Ms. Knight, do you have a, okay. Sorry. So I think this is an action item here, so I think the committee is going to be meeting in the next couple months as well, and they can discuss that. But what we are approving now is the evaluation and the contract timeline. If I'm correct, Dr. Logan, I don't want to assume anything. We can always add things over time, right? Once you, but I'm talking about like if COVID, because of things with COVID,
well,
could change a lot.
We talked about in the committee, we talked about
Yes.
everything being contextualized through that lens. And that's just where we are.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know if we're even going, we don't know where we're going to be next week. So I think for the purposes of what we have there, it makes sense where it is right now. Remember, the strategic plan of action was approved 2 weeks prior to us going into where we are right now. So that is where we are. There's nothing that anybody at this table can do about that.
And the reason I brought that up is just because I was under the assumption that we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to approve something that because of COVID, would just happen, and we said we're going to have this performance or growth, and COVID happens, and we can't measure that because our students aren't able to have that face time or enrichment or rigor that they typically would have in a traditional classroom setting.
We certainly have to adjust for the current reality where we are.
Yes, and I shouldn't be addressing this here. You should be addressing to Dr. Holman, who's the chair. Sorry. But does anybody else have any questions or anything? The main purpose of this was to make sure that we did not end up back where we were the last 2 years, crunch time, trying to approve this, and wanted to make sure that the next board, whoever's here or the same board members here, can see in January, this is the timeline, this is when we do the evaluation, this is when we'll approve the evaluation, and we don't have to come up with these. And my hope is that we can continue this every year for the board and the superintendent. Mr. Perlman.
I just have a couple of questions that just came to mind. And I think everyone here gets that everything's weird right now with a pandemic. It's a once in a lifetime deal. So, I mean, start from that baseline. But how are these goals developed? And who develops them?
The goals are developed with the superintendent. Superintendent presents these goals to the committee, and the committee works with the superintendent on addressing the goals, and that the accountability committee brings that to the entire board. So it's in collaboration.
Okay. Is there typically any inputs from the rest of the board members before it comes to the board for a vote?
No, because it's a committee, that it comes from the committee, and the committee is bringing it to the board. Obviously, if the rest, how many people are on the committee? I think there's 4 board members on that committee. Ms. Ryan, Mr. Smith, Ms. Sniper, are you on the committee? No. Dr. Holman and myself. Is there anything that you want on that, or that you didn't see that you would like to be put in here?
I'm going to be gone in like 2 months. I'm just asking for future folks.
I understand. I'm just saying. So the committee makes that. It's just like on budget or anything. If that's an interest of yours or anybody, you can sign up for accountability committee. This isn't Mrs. Gotti.
So to your point earlier, what we are approving tonight is both the timeline and the goals. Is that correct? And at this point, is there no opportunity, is that what you're saying, to change goals? Or to have a conversation about?
It's an action item. I mean, I think in my opinion, if you could, and then bring it back at a later date, but my goal was to have this approved before the next 3 board members or whatever shows up in January and say, we want the superintendent to be evaluated on attendance only, and now you have this kind of confusion.
Right, no, I think it is really important. Probably, maybe moving forward, it's probably important to get that done at the start of this school year so that you have the entire year to work toward the goals. So I would say that would probably be number 1. My recommendation going forward is get those things done in August. And then number 2, I just think, however this works out, I think that, clearly Board of Education collaboration is important, financial stewardship is important, but I also think there's an academic component that, is there. Maybe some specific component of the strategic plan that we're looking to see so that you actually have an object that you can have as measurable. Because I think that's where, in the past, I mean, I've gone through this, for many years and know that if it's not some concrete, measurable task, then it becomes a little bit subjective and everybody has a hard time actually measuring the superintendent on that. And I think that's really the Board of Education's job through all the different trainings I've been to. I do think it's extremely important to have the timeline laid out the way it is for the evaluation to happen before the contract. So I think that it's very important to have this timeline laid out.
I understand. Thank you. But the initial idea of this was, I had this idea that we were going to have a board workshop in the summer where we all came together and COVID didn't exist and go over the superintendent's evaluation and have that dialogue, but we didn't get to have that this year because of COVID. And obviously we've been going through a lot, so the committee has taken it upon their shoulders to present this. Obviously we do have the strategic plan that does have those metrics in there. And I'm confident enough that I believe the staff that will meet those metrics, and if they can't meet them, they will come to the board and let us know what the challenges are. This is an action item, so I will entertain a motion to approve item J1C.
So moved.
There's a motion by Mr. Smith. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Perlman. Discussion. Hear none, roll call. Mr. Smith, sorry. I always look that way.
That's fine. Just as part of my understanding of being on the committee and being able to have the strategic plan in there is one of the goals. And those are some of the things that we can evaluate ongoing correctly, or, I assume I'm correct. So that way we can, you don't have to put those very specific things in the actual goals here. It's already part of the strategic plan.
So it's already part of the strategic plan, and I believe the district will be providing quarterly updates, Dr. Logan, of the strategic plan progress throughout.
We plan to provide an update and some updated items in January when the new board comes on, and then we would go quarterly after that. We have to remember that it was released, and then we went right into this. So that's where we've adjusted for that.
Yeah, I remember us going into your workroom, and then the next day, the lights went out because of COVID. So this is a living. Yes, the lights are on. I apologize. So the strategic plan is a living document, so it will always be constantly updated, and that data inputted there, so the board can make the best decisions.
Just a quick update. We did meet with our Dr. Crow, who you know is our Director of Strategic Initiatives and Innovation, and Mr. Ray and I met with our with Dr. Ryan, Rebecca Ryan, last 2 weeks ago, to talk about how we were, and each department has been working on updating their areas based on the impact of COVID. So finance, for example, academics, I'm looking around the room, operations, HR. There were some positions, for example, that it didn't make sense for us to hire at this time. So those are some of the adjustments. We have to also, for example, we initiated a new reading series at the beginning of a pandemic, and that certainly has presented some challenges. Our 3 turnaround schools, while we were able to do all of the operational things that we needed to do in terms of really, they look so much better, which is also awesome. And we, gave additional staff. It was, there were, some challenges with adding the Children's Literacy Initiative as we started a pandemic. So, we have had to make some adjustments for what makes sense. Our children have been, our elementary children, just returned on October the 5th. And so if you think about our early literacy initiative and how that was impacted as a result, that is the case. So, those are some of the things that are not Cheryl Logan initiated, but they certainly have to be accounted for in the work that we are doing. And we also have to have situational awareness about what the things are that are important. We just spent 40 minutes with some pretty impressive folks here who are working to do some of the work. That's work that will certainly was not, when we did the strategic plan, we were not planning on doing that, but that certainly is work that will be included when I do the write-up along with our team about our accomplishments for the year. So those are some of the things that, it is a part of, I'm an academician, that's not a secret. So that's the most important thing to me. But underneath that is health, safety, and welfare and social emotional support of our young people as we go through the most difficult thing that we have ever gone through in K-12 education in and even probably the last century, because the last century, most children weren't even allowed to go to school. So that is something that is at the forefront of our minds. The lost learning time keeps all of us awake at night, and we have 20% of our elementary children who are learning remotely, and more than 25% of our high school students. And so all of those things are going to impact how those goals are achieved, and the situational awareness that we all need to have as administration and board leadership about the things that are going to be important for us to move our community, our students, our families, and our community through a very difficult time. And that's what we are going to do. And so there just will need to be adjustments.
No, that's well said. I mean, the number one thing is safety, and having our students and our staff come back to our buildings, and the district taking this initiative to do tracing and making sure they have the best resources to take care of their families is amazing, amazing. And I think, in my opinion, sometimes people don't pay attention to how amazing this district is. Because there are other districts our size and larger that don't have these great connections. Mrs. Cracky.
So what we're doing tonight, my is on, but I'm not hearing it. There we go. What we're doing tonight is approving what the goals are. That's all we're doing.
So you're approving the goals in the timeline.
All right.
The goal.
It's a crunch of the timeline. I don't know how we can achieve what we want to from any superintendent right now with the crunch and the inability to really know what we're doing when we get the results back from the children. And the teachers don't even know for sure what they're doing. They're trying really hard. We're all kind of in a stir.
The timeline is just keeping us on.
It said May.
Yeah, so the timeline just keeps us on track, and like anything, because it's an agreement between the board and the superintendent, we can always have that discussion with the superintendent. And if we can come, obviously, the superintendent will come to us and say if something is crazy happening in the district and we have to change it. That's our collaboration with Dr. Logan, and I am very confident that anything like that will occur, she will bring it to us immediately, because she knows she is the driver of the district.
I'm not having a problem with Dr. Logan. My problem is that right now, all of the things that are in a contract that cannot really be met under the circumstances doesn't make it fair.
Can you give me an example? I'm sorry.
So, with what we're doing with all of the things, I just don't think it's fair right now. And maybe by May I'll feel differently, but everyone...
Sorry, can you tell me what in the contract that you're talking about?
No,
Mrs.
I'm
Cracky?
fine with her contract, but I'm talking about her meeting all the goals, because I know that she must be stressed every day.
She came up with those goals, though. I mean, she agreed with those goals.
Right now, how do you feel about meeting what's in the contract? For sure, we don't want to downplay anything, it's hard.
One of the things that's embedded in the goals is that everything is through the lens of working through a pandemic and what that means. And so we worked to make sure that that was just woven throughout the evaluation, is that the context of doing all the work this year will be through the lens of a pandemic. So, and I can give you an example. The other day we met with the next presentation. We met with a group of teachers, virtually of course, from Buffett and King Science, and we started off our conversation by saying, life goes on, right? So we're still building 5 schools, right? Because we need the space, and that work continues. So we have to, even though we're dealing with the things that have to be done, the day-to-day things that are consuming pretty much everybody's time, we have to plan forward for those things. The high school work that you saw, that work all occurred during a pandemic. It started in, was it late February through, currently, as we look at that high school redesign work, working with our schools all virtually. And so that work continues, but there's still the day-to-day stuff that is quite consuming of time. But again, and those are goals that are in the strategic plan that we are continuing to work on, even though we are consumed with, I'm looking at Susan, so Mrs. Christopherson, so, because that work just that work continued. The work that Dr. McFarland and Mr. Hughes are getting ready to present to you with school student assignment plan work and grade configuration work continues to move, even though we have to do the day-to-day stuff. So we continue to work towards the goals of the strategic plan. We just have to remember that some of the things and the ways we're going to be able to measure things are going to be impacted by whether students are in school or out of school, how much instruction they've been able to have as a result, and those kinds of things.
Why I am talking about it, I just wanted to make it clear and to others also that we're in a different time and everything is moving not the way we want it to. So I just wanted to point that out, that nothing wrong with the staff. In fact, I don't know anybody I'd get rid of right now.
They're amazing.
So that means they're good.
They are, for the record, they are wonderful. I tell them that as much as possible. Send them notes, grams, and all kinds of stuff. So thank you for that, Mrs.
They're the
Cracky.
best staff east of the Rockies, west of the Mississippi, Mr. Haynes. Mrs. Cracky, the main reason I had to think about it, that we brought this up and wanted to actually have the board approve this, was because of COVID. That we wanted to make sure that the superintendent and her administration wasn't going to get pigeonholed into some hard numbers that they could not control in a pandemic. And that's why if you look at the evaluation, if you look at the timeline, everything is COVID or pandemic-esque. So with that, I will entertain a motion. Is this, I think we already,
We did that.
we did do that. Dr. Holman?
I just need to make a correction. I am not the current chair of the Accountability Committee. I just joined the committee. I'm not the chair.
I'm
as
the chair
right
of the
now.
committee. I'm the chair of the committee. And I'm the one that came up with the idea to make sure that everything had an asterisk by it through a pandemic on there, because I want to make sure that this board, who majority of us hired our superintendent, wasn't going to have another board change what our superintendent was charged with and tasked with.
And Mark, can I add that we'll have 9 days to work on that evaluation, so
Yep.
we'll be able to consider the pandemic and everything else that's going on when we're doing that.
Yes, and here's the thing on it. I mean, in my opinion, I think it's going to go, the evaluation is going to go a lot more smoothly because everybody knows the dates. So the dates will be there, and as the committee looks at this and has that discussion with the superintendent, they can bring different changes in front of the board on, hey, we have to change this because something else changed. But the way the evaluation tool looks now is it's completely in a situation where no matter what happens, we can still get an evaluation for our superintendent, and that's one of our jobs as a board, is to evaluate the superintendent. Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Ryan,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Snipe,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Cassidy,
Aye.
Goding,
Aye.
Allman,
Aye.
Cracky,
Aye.
Froman. 8 ayes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item J1D, J1E. Mrs. Cracky, I believe you wanted those items pulled, which is the approval of the agreement with the Omaha Conservatory of Music and Gold Center. Did you have any particular questions on those two items, or
You just
No,
want-
I just wondered, was there someone here that was going to be able to make a presentation to some extent and tell the public what we are doing?
Thank you, Ms. Coleman.
Good afternoon, President Snow, members of the board, Dr.
Good evening.
Logan. And Mrs. Kratke, I do not have a formal presentation, but I'm more than happy to share information regarding
just share
this.
information.
Okay.
Sure.
So we are in year 2 of a 3-year grant with the Sherwood Foundation. And prior to the grant being written, we conducted an extensive study of all of our instrumental performances. And one of the highlights of that study was that we needed to provide one-on-one lessons or small group lessons to our students. And so we have found that other districts and some of our students have access to one-on-one lessons and small group lessons, but not all of our students do. So we wanted to make sure that we provided that opportunity so students had an opportunity to learn. We also have found that it keeps retention. Our students are more likely to remain playing. And we have also found, since we're in year 2, that last year we actually had more students participating at state. And so this is an opportunity to allow all of our students to have that opportunity.
It's fine. And do you want to tell who's teaching the lessons and where they're provided?
Absolutely. So this contract is with the Omaha Conservatory of Music, and that is a music school here in Omaha. It's off of about 70th and Cass. And so we have a contract with them, if that is approved tonight, that will provide those lessons. In the contract, due to COVID, the contract does stipulate that it can be virtual or in person, depending on the health and safety.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'll first and foremost focus on the Goals Center. The Goals program was an initiative and a program that came out of the learning community, and so we are bound to adhere to our contract with the Goals program. We have been working with them for quite some time. They actually have an office here on the 4th floor. The Goals Center works closely with 4 schools in the Omaha Public Schools: Nathan Hill, Norris Middle School, Minnelusa, and Lothrop. And they work with identified students and their families through a partnership to improve student attendance. And so this is just an update to our yearly contract with the Goals Center.
And we have it with the other schools involved too, so.
Yes, we specifically, when we took a strategic approach to improving chronic absenteeism, we wanted to focus on our highest need schools and really provide wraparound supports. And so in working with research, that's how we identified those 4 specific schools. And we know that when it comes to young people that struggle with chronic absenteeism, it's really about relationships and support within that school community. And so this interlocal agreement is just an update to a yearly program that we support with them.
Well, I think it's a good thing, and, you know, at some point, we'd like to hear some of the results.
Yes, absolutely. And we know when it comes to improving student attendance, it's never one thing, but they're a support system to the work that we've been focusing on. And then everyday labs, we went into contract with them, I believe it was 2 years ago, in alignment with our focus on Strive for 95. And as a direct result of where we're at with the pandemic, they were accommodating and allowed us just to take the contract for this year and move it to next year. And they support all of our communication with families around number of days and absences to really improve attendance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion to approve item J1D.
So moved.
There's a motion by Mr. Smith. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Snipe. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Snipe.
Aye.
Snow. Aye. Cassidy.
Aye.
Godding.
Aye.
Holman.
Aye.
Cracky.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Motion carries. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve item J1E.
So moved.
There's a motion by Mr. Smith to approve item J1E by, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Snipe. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Ray, roll call, please.
Snipe,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Cassidy,
Aye.
Gadding,
Aye.
Holman,
Aye.
Cracky,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Motion carries. Thank you. And thank you, staff, for presenting, and Dr. Logan for working with our board on that. Moving on to the next item is the grade configuration update, J2A. Hmm. 1918 has nothing on our math style.
You can do whatever you. This is a.
Ready?
Oh, good evening. Sorry. I
Good
apologize.
evening. No.
Welcome. I love your mask, by the way.
Thank you. My shout out to my daughter.
Awesome.
It matches my earrings. I told Mr.
Wow.
Ray that I was going to start mooing up here. So, no, it's not late enough. So let's not go there. President Snow, members of the Board of Education, Dr. Logan, thank you for the opportunity to come here this evening and present to you this information item. I will be joined by colleagues from district leadership to recommend this share this information item with you. Our information item is grade level configuration changes for implementation in 2023-24 school year for changes at Alice Buffett Magnet Center, King Science Magnet Center, and the feeder elementaries of Fullerton, Picot, Standing Bear, and Lothrop. Specifically, these grade level configuration changes would see the two middle schools transition in the start of the 2023 school year from their current grade configurations of 5-8 to the 6-8 model. This would also see the expansion of the elementary feeders from their current kindergarten through grade 4 to kindergarten through grade 5 grade configuration. The 6 through 8 middle school model has been part of district discussion and planning for some time. In fact, I think it was all the way back to the opening of our last middle school, which was Alfonso Davis in 2013. In 2014-15, district leadership continued planning for the transition of middle schools to the 6-8 model. And in December of 2015, the board supported the district recommendation to open all newly constructed schools, middle schools, as well as those schools that had capacity, and when we finished our bond construction, to open those schools also, or transition those schools also to that 6-8 model. In 2016, 3 of our middle schools that previously supported grades 7 through 8 transitioned to the 6-8 model. And that was McMillan, Monroe, and Nathan Hale middle schools. That same year, Morton Magnet, which also previously supported the 5-8 grade configuration, also transitioned to the 6-8 model. In 2018, following completion of phase 1 of the bond construction, Beveridge Middle School, or Magnet Center, also transitioned from supporting students in grades 7 and 8 to the 6-8 model. Now skip ahead to 2022. The board has already adopted the transition of Mars Magnet Center, which also currently supports that 5 through 8 configuration, to the 6-8 model. That would also include the expansion of the elementary feeders, Gomez Heritage and Spring Lake, of transitioning from kindergarten through grade 4 to the kindergarten through grade 5 configuration. In 2023-24, we will open the 5th of our schools, our new schools, to open in 2023-24, and it will be a middle school. At 42nd and Y, it will also be configured as a middle school, grades 6 through 8. That same year, we will see the completion of renovation to Bryan Middle School, which also currently supports grades 7 and 8, and they will transition and open as a 6 through 8 middle school. That brings us to tonight's information item and the recommended transition of Alice Buffett and King Science Magnet Centers, and again, in the fall of 2023. In preparation for coming before you this evening, we met with curriculum and instruction support, human resources, district communications, and the principal supervisor who supports all of those schools. We also met with the 6 school principals, as well as Dr. Logan mentioned, we met Friday with the staff from King Science and also from Alice Buffett Magnet Center. This information has also been shared with members of our Board of Education Student Assignment Plan Committee. And on Friday, an email communication went out to the school communities of the 6 schools, including staff and families, informing them of our information item this evening. So following our presentation this evening, we plan to come back to you for action at the next November 16th meeting. Once adopted by the board, we will again communicate with the school communities, well, more than 2 years in advance of implementation. To review with you the rationale for the 6-8 configuration, I invite my colleague from Curriculum and Instruction Support, Mrs. Susan Christofferson, to the podium.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. McFarland. Good evening, President Snow, Vice President Holman, board members, and Superintendent Logan. Thank you for this opportunity to present the proposal on the middle level grade configurations at Alice Buffett Magnet Middle School and King Science and Technology Magnet Center for the 2023-2024 school year. The why. Aligning schools K-5 and 6-8 will assist in serving as a more consistent model for curriculum delivery by better targeting resources to further academic and social emotional development. It will also reduce transitions and increase planning to support students and families in this process. This shift continues to support the middle school model with emphasis on early adolescent social emotional development with teaming, common plan time, teacher content specialization, and professional development. This shift also increases an alignment across our district with the middle level model. Our current 6-8 middle schools are Beveridge, Davis, Nathan Hale, McMillan, Morton, and Monroe. Lewis and Clark and Norris are also 6-8 middle schools, but do not currently serve all of their feeder 6th grade students because of the lack of physical capacity. And looking forward in the future, Mars is adjusting to a 6-8 in the 22-23 school year, as this work was done during the boundary adoption process. In the 23-24 school year, our newest middle school, as Dr. McFarland mentioned, will open at 42nd and Y, which will open as a 6-8. And Bryan Middle School would then shift from a 7-8 to a 6-8 middle school, with the last 2 remaining schools being Buffett and King Science and Technology Magnet Center. This change also aligns to the work of our strategic plan of action powered by foresight and more directly to support 2 district priorities, academics and ethic of care. One of our strategic goals is to increase participation of our middle school students across the district in advanced academic courses. Also, we believe in focusing our efforts on improving social emotional skills for all students in all schools and programs. At this time, I would like to turn the presentation over to Casey Hughes from the Research Division. Mr. Hughes.
Thank you, Susan. As Dr. McFarland mentioned, a lot of this work to transition our middle schools to a 6-8 configuration began in 2014 and 2015. At that time, the district did a survey of all of our elementary school families and really asked about middle school and elementary school grade configuration. The respondents in the Buffett and King Science attendance area, at about a 40% clip, suggested that they preferred or thought that a K through 5 elementary model over a K4 model. Additionally, about 70% of all families thought that Having 5th grade and or 6th grade in the middle or in the elementary school was better than a kindergarten through 4th grade model. These results were present across that survey and across the district and align to the changes being discussed today. Moving forward, as has been suggested, we want to make sure we communicate this as far in advance as we can. Bringing this to you today gives us a full 2 school years to communicate this to our families and for those families to adjust to this impact, as well as the schools to adjust to this change. Additionally, it gives the district a lot of time to coordinate and prepare for all of the changes that have to take place for that transition in 23-24. Ideally, in 23-24, it will be as simple as having Alice Buffett and King Science not fill a 5th grade class, and having Fullerton, Lothrop, Picot, and Standing Bear add a 5th grade class simply made up of the current or the 4th grade class from the year before. When we talk about middle school and the preparation, we want to make sure we're kind of easing that transition to a 6-8. One of the ways we can do this is by gradually increasing our incoming 6th grade class in order to build a population at the school in that first transition year that really mirrors the population that we want in that school going forward. So at Alice Buffett, if we were to kind of do nothing and just not fill our 5th grade class in 2023-24, the population can drop from about 1,155 students all the way down to 870. However, if we think about it over the next 2 years, increases our class sizes at 6th grade just a little bit, and not class size from the perspective of students in a individual classroom, but the overall size of the 6th grade class to about 315 students. By the time we get to 2023-24, we can have a population at Buffett at about 945 students, as opposed to that 870 if we would have done nothing. At King Science, the same thing can happen. Instead of just doing nothing and not filling that 5th grade class, we can up those class sizes just a little bit in 6th grade over the next 2 years to set us up for a good population at that school in that first transition year. Overall, this is really just to kind of ease that transition, but again, also to set us up for the population we want to see at the school to be in place in that first transition year. At the elementary level, Fullerton, Lothrop, and Picot will have sufficient classroom space to transition 5th grade in 23-24. All 3 of those schools will have 5 or more classrooms available after they've accounted for their elementary, or their early childhood through 5th grade. So plenty of classroom space at those 3 schools. Standing Bear, on the other hand, is a little tight. If we were to transition 5th grade this year, we would have just enough classrooms to do our early childhood through 5th grade. So over the next 2 years, again, to kind of make sure we can comfortably accommodate 5th grade at that school, we want to make sure we look at the class sizes that are coming in at the kindergarten level, ideally finding a way to potentially get some of those grade levels to 4 sections, and then also evaluating the movement of those early childhood classrooms, of which there are 3 at Standing Bear, so that we can make sure that in 23-24, there's sufficient classroom space in order to transition those 5th grade students or have those students stay for 5th grade at Standing Bear. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin Johnson from Human Resources.
Thank you. From a HR perspective, a changing grade level configuration will most likely have an impact on staffing. And that's one of the reasons we met with Buffett staff as well as King Science staff last week. Even though this change wouldn't occur until the 23-24 school year, we want to be proactive in communicating to staff how we handle changes like this. HR currently has a process in place that addresses situations where staffing levels at a building change due to many circumstances, grade level configuration included. This process facilitates the transfer of impacted teachers to positions that are open through attrition in their current building or in other buildings around the district. This is the same process that we've used in previous grade level configurations, and it's the same process that we plan to use when we transition Mars to a 6-8 building in 22-23. There are several guiding principles that we follow in this process. First, we want to ensure that all transfers, internal staffing shifts, or placements have a positive impact on student achievement. We also want to ensure clear, consistent, and timely information to any staff who are impacted. To do this, we solicit their input as well as preferences throughout the process. And we also work to get input of the principals at the buildings. Finally, we work to expedite the timeline for teachers who are impacted over our annual teacher transfer process. In addition to this current process, we will also have a new process that will guide the staffing for our new middle school at 42nd and Y. This process will be happening at the same time that building is opening, so teachers who are impacted at King Science or Buffett would be eligible for the staffing process for the new school as well. Finally, as we've discussed, these changes will not occur until 2023-24, 2.5 years from now. We will give detailed guidelines about the implementation of the staffing process to all of those staff who are specifically impacted the year prior to the change in 22-23. With that, I'll turn it back to Dr. McFarland.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Before we conclude tonight's presentation, I'd like to summarize for you our next steps. As I had mentioned, we plan to come back to you at the next board meeting and request your action on this recommendation. Once adopted by the board, we will begin again communicating with the school communities well in advance, 2.5 years in advance of implementation. And then you also heard about all the logistics and planning that have to go in place, and so we will start in the early spring meeting with our Facilities Use and Programming Committee, which is made up of district leadership, to really take a look at the process for implementing this across the next 2 years. And as we've said, our plan is to open in 2023-24 with grade level configuration changes at Alice Buffett and King Science, as well as those feeders. Again, that would be Fullerton, Picot, Standing Bear, and Lothrop. And with that, if you have any questions, we are prepared.
Thank you so much, Dr. McFarland and staff, for presenting tonight on the grade configuration. I remember us sitting in that room over there in 2014 and Casey putting me in my place about on the student assignment plan on the grade configuration. I do remember that. And I deserved it. I did. Mrs. Godding.
I'm not going to say anything because I was in that room too. That's funny. So first of all, I do think, wow, it has been a long time since 2014 in that survey. And I know that I have many parents who are very excited to have their children in 5th grade at the elementary level. So they're looking forward to that. I do think one thing is that's really good on the next steps outline is the 2021-22 just review, because we're in such an odd year this year. And next year will really be the year that we learn, did students come back, or are we getting new students, or did they not come back? And that will really inform, I'm sure, a lot of the work that you'll need to do in trying to figure out how to do that configuration piece across the district, really, so that you don't end up with buildings that are out, one size totally different than another, even at the middle school level. So thank you very much for the presentation. I feel like it's been a long time, so I'm really happy that we get to vote on that before I leave the board.
Mr. Smith.
I have a pretty basic question, I think. With the student assignment plan, will they be working with transportation to make sure that those kids are able to get to the schools, and how that growth plan looks?
Yes, so as we work with facilities use and programming, that's transportation and district operations are also members of that committee, and so we will look at that for all of the schools that would be impacted. And again, district communications is committed to advance communication to those families, and our research department will identify those that have a direct impact based on their grade level, their address as we have it, and we'll communicate.
Mrs. Cracky.
This is going to have a very good impact on the people up here dealing with all the configurations that were there before. So life will be smoother. I didn't say easier, just smoother. You'll know what happens at the different grade levels, and then everybody isn't going on in their head deciding, oh, is that configured that way or that way? We'll be doing things in a consistent manner, and I like that very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? This is an information item. I'm assuming you're going to be coming back to the board in
2 weeks.
2 weeks? All righty. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next item is J2B, Budget Audit Committee update. Mrs. Gaudian.
Okay, we met back a few weeks ago, a couple weeks ago, October 19th. And we're on track with the audit. So that is important to know. A couple other things to note that our property tax receipts were actually about $9 million more than what we thought they were going to be. And there were also open requisitions primarily due to COVID that never got filled because we didn't have kids in school or whatnot, and that was about 13 million, as well as some areas where we didn't have as many expenses in transportation, et cetera, of about 3 million. So that, all of that increase does provide us with somewhere $30–40 million of cash in our unrestricted reserve, in excess of where we wanted to be. One of the things that I think is really important is the district is planning to hire, they have hired someone to do financial planning and analysis, and that person's in that role. I think that's really critical going forward, that there's someone dedicated to that role that can actually monitor these numbers closely throughout the year so that there's a sense of when there's excess money available prior to getting to the end of the year, and so that those funds could be used during that particular school year, because I think that's what you typically hear from the taxpayer is, if we wrote the tax check, then use the money in that year. So I think that that's an important thing. So as of right now, there are some plans to use some of that money for purchase orders and requisitions this year, and also to use some for new school spending. And I'm assuming those will be approved. So the ones that are to fill requisitions would have been filled in last year's budget. Is that correct, Mr. Roberts? And then the additional for new school spending, is that something the board will approve at some point? Yes, okay. Just trying to make sure I explained that correctly. Also, the third tranche of the 2018 bond issue is planned for March or April. And then, so the third is the 130 million, and then there would be a remaining 75 million in 2022. So probably 21 would be when this third tranche would go about of 130 million, just to give you a sense from a planning standpoint. That'll show up on the calendar. And also the potential to refinance some of the 2015 bonds, which would save maybe $10 to $11 million, which would definitely be a good thing for the taxpayer. So I think that's important to know. The money that we had voted on with the unassigned funds for one-time projects for the 1920 year, if you remember, was 37 million. 34.5 of that has been spent, so there's just a little bit left to spend. And then there are excess unassigned funds, one-time projects of 21.7 million. And was that, Mr. Roberts, already in this year's budget? Did we already approve that? Yes, that's what I thought. So that money has not been spent yet, but those were things like the T-Mobile contract, extra school session for summer school for next summer, and some of those things, the turnaround schools that Dr. Logan mentioned a little bit ago. So those things have not been started yet, but they will happen. And then we had been allocated $23.2 million for the CARES Act. At one point when we were doing the budget, $3.6 million was the number that was given to us as what would go to the private schools. That number has been changed to about $1.5 million, so the remainder of that money would stay with us. So about $2 million. Yeah, about $2 million of those funds stay with us. And then just thinking about student enrollment in state aid, because that was one of the things we talked about. How does our reduction in student enrollment impact state aid in the future, because those numbers don't happen this year, it'll happen later on, right? And so one of the things that Mr. Roberts pointed out was that there's a calculation, the general fund operating expenditures per student, And this past year, that number actually went up by about $119 in the pool of schools that we're in. And when that goes up, even if you lose students, you may not really see a big change because the cost per student that you're getting from the state actually has increased. So if that makes sense. So we'll just have to wait and see once those numbers are finalized, our student census in mid-November. And hopefully we could get an update at the next board meeting on what that number is. That would be helpful. Then we might have a better understanding of where we'll be state funding wise next year. And I think that that'll be really important for the future board to be aware of. And then the last thing is there has been someone hired to be the new internal audit manager. That's kind of a personal favorite of mine. I came in wanting that position hired, and then we did, and then we let that position go. And so I feel like it's something that when you have that position, you typically have better control over your expenditures and waste and those type of things, and internal controls are better. So I'm excited that that position has been rehired and hope that that stays for the long term. So that is the update. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Much, Mrs. Goding. Also, people that are inspired to be on the board or current board members, Mrs. Goding is our chair of this committee and will not be on the board in the future, so we're going to have big shoes to fill in that role. So thank you so much for your time and effort in auditing and just really being a person with numbers, because it helps this board and the district, and I appreciate that. Our next item is policy committee update. Ms. Ryan.
The policy committee met 2 weeks ago, and we went over the rest of the, 4,000s, which mainly had to do with staff, if I'm remembering correctly. Yes, there's a lot in there, so you'll see Mr. Ray will go through the changes. If you go through them and you see anything that you want to call our attention to, please let me and Mr. Ray know. And then the second portion of our meeting was to discuss the transition between current board members and any new board members that will be decided tomorrow. I've just been really reflective of what my onboarding was like, and so have other board members, and so we just really want to make a really smooth transition and exchange of knowledge and expertise to those new members. So if there's anything that you guys have in your head about your onboarding experience, also let us know. And then, same thing that Mr. Snow said, that I will be off the board come January, and so if somebody wants, the policy committee chair, it's up for grabs.
Yes, yes, indeed. And you can't complain about policy if you don't want to be on the committee. So, so thank you so much for your service on there as well. I know my onboarding experience back in 2013 was practically drinking out of a fire hydrant. Mr. Ray was still trying to discover what the board was and developing it, because there wasn't anything back then. And he's developed our board and what it is today. So thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. Giving everybody shout outs today. The next one is policy updates. Mr. Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Snow, Dr. Logan, Dr. Holman. Thank you very much for allowing me to present some of the updates we've presented to the policy committee. On the agenda is the first attachment is the outline of all the 4,000s with some additional policies at the end. Also on the agenda, they are saved as updated and reviewed, meaning the updated ones have changes. The reviewed ones are the ones that the policy committee has recommended moving forward, and they're also highlighted in red on that first attachment. So first, most of these are just updating some language when you look at 402 and 403. And some additional language and clarifying some job titles throughout 404 and 405, and some wording on retirement on 408. 423, we worked with Mr. Perlman on some thoughts that he had on this policy. We met with Mr. Wakefield and Mr. Perlman and Megan as well to review 4023. 4033, staff appraisal, some updated wording on that. No other recommended changes until we get to 1200, 1210, and 5420. 1210 will be a formal presentation at the next board meeting. It's a long policy, it's a new policy, it's a thick policy. So the policy committee decided that this would be a presentation to go over it. It's a significant policy that requires a little bit more information to the whole board, so you have that information to act upon. So again, this is information. If you review some of these and you have any extra ands or semicolons or colons, please let me know and I will make sure to update them. And again, thanks to the policy committee for taking the time to go through all these, and that also this is part of our annual review of the whole policy book. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. This is for your review, board members. As you know, this is an election time. It is really hard to get on a school board when you think about it on a down ballot race. Most voters don't go all the way down the ballot, and for anybody that runs to be on the largest school board in the state, it's a huge task, and I think a lot of people don't understand how much money you have to raise, how many faces you have to introduce yourself to within that district to understand how it works, to meet constituents, and then still, out of all that, you have to figure out how these board meetings work. And I just want to say, Keegan Corp, thank you so much for being here tonight. It is very admirable. You, I don't think, have missed any board meetings. And to me, that shows a lot that you're willing to put in the work. And good luck with you tomorrow. And thank you so much, because to come to these board meetings and try to understand everything before January, it's a daunting task. So thank you so much. With Mrs. Gotti.
Right. I just have a quick question on these 4,000s.
Yes.
Did OEA look at all of this before it showed up tonight? I'm curious about that. And then let me ask about that first, on the 4,000s.
On the policy?
Mr. Wakefield is nodding his head over there. So that's,
okay. Yes. Okay. Just to make sure. And then on 1210, because I printed it off and it is huge, is everything the red and the blue new? I wasn't sure what the two different colors were. So can you explain that?
Sure. It's not much of an explanation other than that there's two different colors in the font. Most of this is all new.
Okay.
Very little of the original policy was maintained, so we've sort of just treated it as a completely new policy.
And is it new because of change in legislation, or just because we needed to do an update? I'm just curious before I sit down and read it, so I understand where we're coming from.
Sure. So the Department of Education, the National Department of Education, updated their Title IX guidance, which has caused all colleges and all K through 12 organizations to be required to update their policy. And so they did this in the middle of COVID, so we're getting to it and making sure that we get it updated as part of that revision process. And it's very extensive, and so there are a lot of requirements in it. And so instead of having a practice manual behind the scenes, we have a policy that everybody can see what the requirements are. Everybody can read it. It's out there for the public to see. It's on the board's website, and it provides that, and we'll go through it here next week.
Thank you very much for telling me that.
Thank you. That's the end of our agenda here for tonight. There is no receipt of reports, so we go Dr. Holman.
I move that the Board of Education go into closed session for the protection of the public interest and for the prevention of needless injury to the reputation of individuals, to discuss with the superintendent, secretary to the board, legal counsel, Scott Roberts, and Mark McQueen, real estate, potential litigation, negotiations, and legal advice.
There's a motion to go into closed session by Dr. Holman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Cracky. Roll call, please.
Snow.
Aye.
Cassidy.
Aye.
Gadding.
Aye.
Holman.
Aye.
Cracky.
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Snipe.
Aye.
8 aye.
Motion carries. Let the record reflect that I have a script. Yeah, let the record reflect the board went into closed session at 9:10. Thank you. We're going to have this closed session in this room, so everyone else will have to leave. Thank you.